Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamso Ma Jyoti Gamaya Pratya Amritam Gamaya. Lead us from
darkness to light,
the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. So we begin as usual with questions. No questions.
Swamiji, if you dedicate all your actions to God, can you do without a work-life balance? Or is there any such thing?
So if you dedicate all your actions Godwards, then is there a work-life balance? In other words, can you continue doing your duties
Give your best
with due diligence? That's a good question. And it depends on the level of concentration that you have. So there are some activities. Activities have different variations. Some activities require the full impact of your full concentration. 100% attention needs to be there. In which case, what are you thinking of? Only that action. Other actions are more the unconscious area, habitual area, driving, for example, or anything that doesn't require any specific conscious thought. Because of repeated habits, this action has been put into the unconscious area, a habit level, and we don't really have to pay too much attention to it. Obviously, when things impinge on your consciousness, such as a vehicle coming from the left or so on, then you return to averting the crisis, because you see it puts you out of the normal routine kind of thing. Yeah, so find yourself a chair so that you're close up. That's fine. Work-life balance is what we call karma yoga, actually. Any other action which has inherently some disturbance in it will be karma, but not yoga. The whole purpose of any yoga is to reduce or eliminate completely all the various disturbances and difficulties in the mind. The mind being in a state of turmoil will result in a lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge means a lack of insight which shows what is the reality somewhere. But we have to go through the whole life with a sense of discernment, discrimination, sorting out, and we've been through this, sorting out what is real, what is not real, what is valuable, what is not, what is permanent, what is impermanent. That's why I said that prayer to start with. Because your question is directly related to this passage going on forward. Naturally, what we call balance, the technical term for it is dharma. Dharma implies the thing that brings, sustains and restores some kind of harmony. The universe is, generally speaking, in a state of dharma. That doesn't mean to say smooth sailing. Birth, life and death is all part of dharma. It's designed like that. Your body is designed to have birth, life and death even while you are alive. Every 7 years, your entire body gets a physical overhaul. All your cells of the body get completely changed. So every 7 years, a sabbatical is there, and the whole body gets a tune-up, even though externally you don't look any younger or different. In fact, you look different, of course, but not younger. Yeah. So that means that all the wrinkles start increasing, and the hair starts going a different color, and so on. All these things go.
Yeah. There's no hair.
Yeah. Somebody once said to me earlier on today, there are a group of creationists who don't believe in dinosaurs. I said, they obviously haven't looked in the mirror. How to go through your day still being attuned and conscious of God is part of the art of Karma Yoga that is aligned to Bhakti Yoga. There are two ways of doing Karma Yoga, a work-life balance. One is to do every activity mindfully as possible, and understanding that there is a principle that flows, a flowing principle that goes through all the adapters that we call limbs. With that attitude, we dissociate from any disturbing thing in our activity or any results, because Karma Yoga by definition is giving up, surrendering, dissociating from all the fruits or rewards of your activities, understanding they don't really belong to me. The other way is you take all your activities and like small flowers you offer them to the Lord. Somebody mentioned Saint Teresa of Lisieux, yeah? So Teresa of Lisieux, the little flower, made sure every thought, every feeling, every activity gets offered as a flower. And she herself, a little flower, I offer myself also. So this kind of self-surrender immediately aligns ourselves with the Supreme Lover, the divine love of the universe, so that every activity, every thought becomes an action of divine love. That adds a sweetness to Karma Yoga. So the 7th chapter is not exactly discussing Bhakti Yoga as aligned to Karma Yoga. But unless all our waking world has that kind of dedication, then when we sit down and try to steer our attention Godwards in a dedicated way through worship or even meditation, it becomes difficult unless our whole life is flavored with it. So when I was at school, we had to start every essay, every written thing, every mathematical formula and equation with AMDG, which is Latin, it translates as for the greater glory of God. That means before an activity, we can dedicate it Godwards out of love. After the activity, we can do the same. Depending on the level of concentration, during the activity, we probably can't do it. But at least before and after we can do it. There was somebody who once said, if you have a love of God, if that is your path, then why don't you hold a picture of your Ishtadevata, your most beloved, cherished ideal, in your pocket? Before an activity, bring it out, lovingly gaze on it, put it back. After the activity, do the same. So this is one of many, many techniques. Now, what has it got to do with work-life balance? Well, you'll find, firstly, that all the activities are done more efficiently. We waste a lot of time redoing activities because our concentration is not aligned properly, and that's a formula for making mistakes. Every disaster probably was due to that, certainly many of them. Chernobyl was one such instance. There's all these disasters at nuclear plants and so on occur at night time. When people feel a little sleepy, the attention may wander here and there. If you see what was the source of any mistake in your working life, it probably was because the full impact of your attention was missing on that unit activity. It was deviated here and there, and I mentioned a few weeks ago time management is a part of that. That is, taking one single unit activity, when it's done, taking another one, taking another one. That is why Bhagavad Gita defines this Karma Yoga as skill in action and equanimity in the mind as well. If you can do all actions with the maximum skill, that is the maximum energy input and attention, and with a certain equanimity of mind, no stress. Now, if you're worried about the fruits of your actions, or if you're worried about the results of your actions, or you're worried about the other actions that have to be done and are not getting done, it's as if you have a whole resource of energy called thought, and you decided to scatter it like seeds all over the place and take a chance. Concentration means taking the psychic energy, gathering inwards and projecting it outward in one direction, in a one-pointed way. Now this is so with all the energy from head, heart and hand, everything you do, everything you think, and everything you feel. On the basis that the Lord of the universe is everything, everywhere, and is a supreme lover that supplies everything in a timely way for your convenience and the convenience of others. What a beautiful lover that renews all the cells of the body every 7 years, unasked. You didn't have to go to a repair shop and say, please do this for me. It's time for my service. It does it automatically. So, with all this in mind, let us take up now, 7th chapter. And where we left off was at a particular place, and just to remind you, we may have covered it also, Namam duskritino mutaha prapadyanti naradhamaha mayaya paratyana asuram bhavam asritaha. So, there's a particular phrase here, duskritinaha, evildoers. What are evildoers? Why should anybody do anything which is evil, knowing that it is to their own detriment? It is because of the lack of discernment, a lack of clarity. It is a kind of foolishness and arrogance that says, I'll do everything on my own terms. And this world that is presented to me is of such a reality that I'll make do with what it is, and everything that is presented to me is an unchanging, permanent reality, and it's not. And this is what we call Maya, because Maya implies a certain delusion. And so what are the Asuras? Shura is another word for Deva, a divine being. That is, everybody can be a Deva, a divine being. If everybody is orientated Godwards, it's Deva. And Sura comes from Surya, sun. It represents light. That's why I said that prayer, Asato Ma Sadgamaya, comparing, Tamaso Ma Jyoti Gamaya. Lead me from the unreal to the real, and then from darkness to light. What does light represent? It represents knowledge in a wisdom sense. We have final dawn of this jnana is there, this supreme knowledge of the Absolute, wherein there is no pain, there is only bliss. And so Ashura, somebody against that. We can use other terms, demons, and these demonic and divine qualities are expanded in the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita with a long and beautiful list of categories inspiring us to follow the virtues and reject the vices. And so these evildoers, and they are termed to be what? Deluded. Muddaha. Muddaha, deluded. Are we all deluded? Yes, we are. I mentioned this before, that the world runs on delusion. What we call Maya. Maya is the presented world. And why should it be deluded? Because if you view it as a kind of game or a play, it requires delusion. When people write a book, The God Delusion, they should also write a counter book, The World Delusion. We are deluded that this world is a reality. Instead of, and I mentioned before, seeing the world as we see a film. When we see a film, we understand, at least theoretically, that it is not a continuum. It is made up of small pictures. Run at a fast rate, it looks like a running man, a running woman, etc. But it's just a small section, small blocks of pictures, run at a certain speed, and the eye has only the capacity to catch that speed that it's running at. It looks as if somebody's running, somebody's walking. Same thing, exactly the same thing. When we slow this world down, and it runs at low, slow speed, what will we find? We'll find that it is divided to such an extent. And then when we look at it from a physics point of view, we find it's Planck length. Planck length means the smallest unit that we have is 10 to the minus 35 of a meter. There's a meter, so 10 to the minus 35, that means 10 with 35 zeros, additional zeros behind it. That's a huge, it's inconceivable actually, how small that is. And the same thing, of course, goes with if you see a screen, you're watching a screen now. If you examine it closely, you'll find it's not one continuous thing, it's made from small pixels. And the higher the definition of the pixels, the clearer the picture. It means many more pictures, many more squares have to be there. And this world is just like pixels. Now this is not philosophy, this is science. And modern science is trying to see these things in this different way. And it's very clear, what we see and what is presented to us is not what is. Well, we knew that, theoretically. The only thing is the gut doesn't know it. The gut has to catch up with it. The heart has to catch up with it. And so all these people are under delusion, and that means they're unable to discriminate and see what is real, what is not real, what is comparatively dark, what is comparatively light, what is ashura, what is shura, etc. And so the deluded, the lowest of men, deprived of what? Discrimination. That's the difficulty. Why? What deprives them of it? By Maya, Mayaya, by Maya, and following the way of these ashuras. They do not seek refuge in me. They don't think of God. Why? Because they're obsessed with the non-God, the world. And if you're obsessed with the world, you cannot have a work-life balance. If you're obsessed with the world, then what you see, theoretically we should work 8 hours and sleep 8 hours.
So it's actually the opposite of a work-life balance. If you're obsessed with the world, you're actually less likely to be relaxed than if you work more hours and see the world as Maya.
Because if you're obsessed with the world, you'll get anxiety. You're obsessed with the future tense and achievement. And so that makes you more anxious. And also, there's no divine assistance involved. There's no thought of a blissful God that makes you intrinsically joyful.
So you're on your own.
Yeah. And thankfulness is not there. And if thankfulness is not there, then contentment is not there. And the mind is a mess. So we find we can get caught up in it in different ways. Supposing you're running your own business, you think, I alone have to do this, nobody else can do it. And then you assess, well, where was my work-life balance? And you see, let me have one exception. I have a project, let me get over that, then I can relax and things are fine. But it doesn't work like that.
35 years later.
Yeah. And then what becomes of your dharma? Dharma, your equanimity, your harmony, your balance, the thing that knits things together in wonderful harmonic sequence at home or in your other roles. And quite frankly, we all need leisure as well. So this is what they call work-life balance. That there's a work segment, you start, you finish. And then there's a leisure segment, you start, you finish. And then there's a sleep element, and you start and you finish. So some people say, yes, I have a good work-life balance. 16 hours I work, and then 2 hours leisure, and then I get sleep when I can. So yes, you make that regularly. It seems to be kind of regular, but not balanced at all. So for our mere sanity, what implication is that for spiritual life? Spiritual life requires steady practice, a steadiness in your life, an equilibrium, not extremes of up, not extremes of down, a kind of equal steadiness, not extreme moments of happiness, extreme moments of sorrow, not practicing one moment for 5 minutes and not the next. So this has produced a number of different types of devotees, and we understand who does not worship and who doesn't take refuge in the Lord. And so Sri Ramakrishna makes this statement just to remind you, the way of the sieve is to let the fine things pass through and hold the coarse things to itself. Likewise, the way of the wicked is to let, the wicked means the deluded, those who have no discernment or discrimination, those who take the world to be the supreme reality and just live in that, trying to handle the joys and sorrows as best they can and never really getting on top of it. the whole epitome of the opposite of work-life balance. You can put it in those terms. And so, likewise, the way of the wicked is to let the merits go and hold the evils fast. Merits means I don't see any good in this world. It's all a continuous struggle. And the occasional moments that I try to capture, the moments of joy, then these are fleeting. Why? Because we have embroiled ourselves in something that is intrinsically like that, intrinsically not permanent, intrinsically something which has no bliss inherent in it. So the question is, who are they that get drawn to the Lord then? And blessed are they that do. And so this needs to be delineated, and 4 types are put. Firstly, the Bhagavad Gita is extremely good at categorizing things for our convenience, and categorizing them so meaningfully and so accurately that we can identify with it. So 4 types of devotees are there. Now, coincidentally, 4 aims of life are also there. So we have dharma, we have artha, we have kama, we have moksha. So is there some equivalent amongst devotees? Now all of these are legitimate. And so these are the legitimate areas for devotion. And they're ranked in order of inferiority, superiority, but all of them are valid. And so all of them are virtuous. Because even a small step toward God, regardless, even if there's a motive, is naturally good. We approach this truth that we call God in progressive stages. So it says, Chatur vidha bhajanti mam janaha sukritino Arjuna. Arto jitnyasur artarthi jnani cha parta rasabha. So 4 kinds. Chatur vidha. These 4 kinds, what? Bhajanti, they worship mam, me. And these people are sukritana as opposed to dukritana. They are virtuous versus the other ones who don't worship at all. So what are these types? Firstly, artaha, the distressed. All of us get distressed. It's the nature of things. Unlike those who are deluded and don't resort to the Supreme, they try to handle it through some other means, which we can classify as non-virtuous. But the virtuous people will come to a point of desperation where human endeavor won't solve the problem. And so, as Supreme God can do it. Lord, you can do it. If you can spin all the galaxies, if you can make evolve the entire universe, the entire cosmos, if you can even make my heart pump, if you can supply energy for thinking that I can register on a continuous basis, then I'll put it to you. Instead of trying to handle it myself, please you handle it. A kind of faith whereby, like receiving a telephone call, Lord, it's for you. That kind of faith can be there. So 4 types of virtuous people worship. And what are these? The man in distress, the person in distress. Now it's often a question in Vedanta, very often implying Advaita. Is it necessary, is it possible, is it real to have some kind of requisition, some kind of request from God? Should we ask God for the things that will take us out of trouble, or for any other thing? And the answer is that in worship, in devotion, we personalize this entity called God as an entity that we can speak to and listen to. More than a parent, more than a close friend, more than a lover, closer than breathing. Then for sure, surely, our worship can be directed, even in a requisitional way. The only thing Vedanta says is, don't make it a habit. Don't ask all the time. But a child will surely, if it's in desperate circumstances, cry for the mother, or tug at the dress, come on, may I have this, may I have that, course, the mother may say, no, don't be a public nuisance. No. So, are we not children? Are we not all children of the Divine Mother? I always quote the visit that we had from the General Secretary of the Sharda Math, who came here. Not here, but he came to visit us in wherever we were. We were in Blanchardstown at that time. We're like gypsies, we move here and there. So the General Secretary is a very important person. So I introduced her. This is the General Secretary of the Sharda Math, the global organization, and so on and so forth. I could see her listening very tolerantly. Eventually, she gave me a motherly look. There was also a look of chastisement, a little bit, saying, he may say all that, but I'm just the mother's child. Look at that. See how beautiful that is. So, those in distress. And then what about the person seeking knowledge? Every seeker is seeking what is the truth, what is the knowledge. That's most people. The vast majority of people are seeking that. Is that not good? If anybody can give it to you, surely the Lord of the universe can do it. And then what about the person seeking wealth? Yes, wealth when used in a legitimate way. Who else but the entity that provides all the resources and all the wealth of the entire universe? In a moment you can have it. There is a kind of false understanding in many religions that money is evil. But money is just paper and metal. It's neither good nor evil. What you do with it, how much you're attached to it, that's the difference. Without wealth and money, we couldn't have built this place. Without people's generosity of spirit in giving this benefaction of monetary support, we couldn't do any good work anywhere. Without money, UNESCO cannot do anything, Oxfam cannot do anything, schools cannot be built, etc. So, Artha, yes, let us all have wealth. Let us all be wealthy. So, a legitimate request for wealth should be there. Who else can we give the requisition to except the mother and author of wealth itself? And then finally, the wise. The wise know the fullness. They know that there are no gaps, there are no desires necessary. The only thing I have to do is completely saturate myself in loving and being loved. And so jnana at its highest becomes bhakti. This is where jnana yoga and bhakti yoga join together. And so the man seeking wealth, the man imbued, saturated with wisdom. Then of course, the last must be highlighted. Sri Ramakrishna gives this commentary, blessed are they who keep God as their goal and strive accordingly. Zeros have no value, but they gain in value when you link them to the number one. Then it becomes 1,000, 1 million, 1 billion, and so on. Or a Googleplex. So, God is the number one, and all the worldly things are zeros. Independent of God, they are mere ciphers, but when associated with Him, they gain in importance, they gain in meaning, they gain in value. Tesham jnani nitya yukta eka bhaktiye vishishyate priyo hi jnanino chartam aham sacha mam priya. Of them, Tesham, jnani, the wise, ever steadfast, nitya yuktaha. Now, ever steadfast, that means, you see, those in distress, these are devotees for 5 minutes. When the distress passes, they go back to their old ways. Only when impinged on difficulties will they resort to God. This man is very religious. Why? I saw him in church. He was so ardent. He spent the whole night repeating his rosary. I see. What was he looking for? Well, he said, if I can get this, then I'll say 3 rosaries every night. The bargaining process. But when he got what he wanted, did he go back to the church? Did he repeat the rosaries? No. That's fine, thank you. I got what I want. Finished. The contract is finished. So those who are the supreme, it's not that it's wrong, it's a wonderful thing to be in any way associated with God. But the highest, the most cherished, will be those who have no motive for it whatsoever. Love for love's sake only. And so of these the wise man, ever steadfast and devoted to the one, excels. For supremely dear am I to the wise, and the wise, those people are dear to me. So naturally, if I am dear because my endearment is solid and steadfast. So there's only one thing, one entity, one object I have in mind, and that is the Lord of the universe. We were discussing with somebody this morning, how long will I do this devotion, supposingly it's meaningless. Somebody came at around about lunchtime, we were discussing it. How people have a habit in religion. So why do you light a lamp? Because my mother did it, and her mother did it. And I was told you also must do it. No reasoning behind it, purely ritualism. So when should I cease doing it? When I'm doing it, tears flow. See? So a person should be told, see, no, this is superstition until you do it and tears flow. Then it's meaningful. That kind of thing. After God realization, the aspirant himself gets all the godly qualities. That's why we revere holy people, because we see God reflected in them, reflected in their eyes, their face, their whole demeanor. And so, udraha sarva evaite jnani tatmai matam ashtitaha sahi yuktatma mam eva nutamam gatim. So, udhara, noble indeed are all those, sarve, surely. But this wise man, the jnani, I deem to be my very self. For steadfast in mind is established in me alone, not a 5-minute devotee, as the supreme goal. The devotion or the devotees are all favorites of the Lord, all of them. See the breadth of the Lord's accommodation for everybody. Among them again, he who practices this devotion of non-separation stands, of course, foremost. As the fuel consigned to fire becomes itself fire. So the jnani absorbed in this Ishvara, this Lord, this God, who is a blaze of jnana, knowledge and wisdom and realization, becomes one with him. Sri Ramakrishna says this. A master is naturally drawn to a servant who serves him wholeheartedly and to the best of his ability. When their mutual love and fidelity get firm-rooted in the master, the master may someday entrust the management of his entire property to the servant. So in the same way, akin to this act of man, the Lord holds his devotee as his own self. Now the jnani is further extolled because a very important kind of devotee and acts as our ideal and model. And so somebody asked a question last week, or the week before possibly. This is the 19th stanza. What is Vasudeva? Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyati Vasudeva sarvam iti samahatma sthulpa. At the end of many births is very encouraging, in a way. The man of wisdom takes refuge in me. Sooner or later, the evolutionary process culminates in this. But how long does it take? Many births. Don't be impatient. We're not running on your personal time. Man's view of time is very limited. It's arranged in such a way that man can operate in a sequence and have that work-life balance. Understanding, here's a blank check, It's fine. Use it. And then the next one, a second, a split second, use it wisely and invest it in something better for the good of all. That's the ideal. But in God's area, time doesn't exist. Even in the area of general relativity, time doesn't exist. The past and future is the same thing. A movie can be run forward and run backward. It makes no difference. It's only our concept of a sequence. That's all. We're made to run like that. Time is nature's way of making sure that everything doesn't happen in the one moment. And space is nature's way of saying everything doesn't happen in the one place. So we have to live with that. So at the end of many births, the man of wisdom, this person who is taking a refuge in me, not refuge in any other thing, in material wealth or in material pleasure or in all the other things that we can classify as not virtuous. Realizing that Vasudeva is all there that is. Rare indeed is that great soul. What is this Vasudeva? It connotes Pratyag Atman, that which is immanent in everything sentient and is available for being noticed. Vasu, vast, Deva, the illuminating factor. When we see the divine Deva, Vasu in everything, spontaneously. I came across a wonderful Sufi saint. His name is Ibn Arabi. I don't know if you ever heard of him. But because I came across him recently, he's a poet, a Muslim poet, Sufi, but he writes us about divine love. Come sometime, enter my spiritual heart secretly. No one shall see or even hear. I called and no one heard my voice. I shall make my house white clean. It came and found a very clean spring. While being lost in mortality, you fall in divine love. It recognizes you with the love in your spiritual heart. Then the smell of the rose surrounds each layer. Each name captivates you. The joyous cries of all particles becomes heard in the hearts with one cry. What a beautiful, beautiful poetic description of Vasudeva. That wherever you look becomes a delightful expression of the divine, and they who have eyes will see that everywhere. As I said in one of the talks, I said it starts off with you're not seeing things in any great detail or any great beauty or with any great deep significance until you have an inner eye for it. And once that's developed, it's expressed through the outer eye. And suddenly you see everything is flavored and colored with this divine. What a joy that is. And why should we not live in a state of euphoria? It's just good for the chemicals. So at the end of many births, how many births? Let's not count. But many, many births. You take the theory of evolution and just take the biological series of births. How many births did it take to come and culminate just in an upright walking entity that has this huge brain capacity to think, to evaluate, to reason, to philosophize, to examine, to calculate, to plan, to execute? What a wonderful, marvelous mechanism is there. Even you see in the small bacterial cell is more complicated, more complex than you can ever think of. Even a biologist who was also a militant atheist, Richard Dawkins, will say that there's such complexity in a single bacterial cell that and he's now going to say it looks designed. Now he's not for intelligent design by any means. He gives the appearance of design. We can easily see either that is actually designed or it appears to be designed. Well, if it appears to be designed, then the next step is maybe it is designed it this way. And this compounded learning, where a single cell decides that they will make a cooperative effort and make a number of cells, a family of cells that work together, and finally culminating in this wonderful mechanism of the human being, an upright walking entity that facilitates not just walking and thinking and communicating, but also realization, realizing its own deepermost nature. What a wonderful, marvelous thing that is. But how long did it take? So we believe really in the evolutionary flow. That is the theory of flow theory of evolution. You may not have heard the term because I may have invented it, I don't know. But it's just to capture what it means. What it means is that life is like a river, and I was discussing this with a devotee also this morning. It's like a river, and what we call natural selection are obstacles in the way. And so it's not that nature decides to make a selection. It's that nature has the inherent capacity to manifest and get around obstacles. And a good example is water, because water has the capacity not to be contained in any specific form. Whatever form you give it, it takes. And it has the capacity to find the easy route around everything. And sometimes it gets caught up in an eddy or a whirlpool. Sometimes it gets deviated and remains stagnant for many, many years until there may be a flood that urges it on. But every drop of water eventually will arrive at the ocean. Can't avoid it. And so through many, many adventures, many, many births, the same river flowing eventually finds its way to the glorious ocean that we call Brahman. We would think of it in that way. But what we find as a variation in species and all this is merely these obstacles. And Patanjali Yoga Sutra says good and bad deeds are not the direct causes of transformations. And then the comparison is made of bringing water to a field. The only thing that's stopping it is all the gates and obstacles, and a farmer knows how to remove them or put them back to control the flow of water to his field. It's not that we have to ardently and with great effort transfer every drop of water personally and transfer it to the other side. Imagine now having a great hydraulic dam like Kariba or something, and a person now takes with a teaspoon a drop of water, puts it on the other side. No, open the floodgates, that's all that's necessary. So an opening is necessary. And this opening begins with this heightened aspect of worship, progressing from, I am sad, I am depressed, or I am having difficulties. Let me be rescued. All good. Then a deeper understanding. Extend that more beyond the 5-10 minutes of devotion and say, if I can get this much as stress released from that, then surely I can also understand what is the knowledge that I require. Can I not be a seeker to find what is the source of all this world, of all this abundance? And then, having tapped into it, can I not be generous enough to acquire this abundance around me and distribute it? Artha. And then finally, can I not realize that there's not a deficit anywhere? I'm entitled and deserve to enter into the blissful ocean, which is my own immortal nature. What a wonderful adventure this is, that we call evolution. This is not the natural selection that we find from neo-Darwinian evolutionary theory, which has many, many different aspects and different incompatible flaws within it. This is the most ancient concept of it, that whatever comes out as consciousness in man at the end must be there inherently in the beginning. And it's only a material paradigm that gets in the way. But such a thing, such an attitude, those people will not take refuge in the Lord, and we register them as those people who are dealing with materialism. No doubt, intrinsically good people, and yet not virtuous by the very fact that they are not exerting their free will and their discriminatory faculty, just going with the flow, so to speak. But they will still be carried. they will still be irresistibly urged forward and finally culminate in this and realize this Vasudeva everywhere. Wherever they look, their eyes will be tinted with the divine. Whatever they smell, whatever they touch, whatever they taste, whatever they experience, it'll all be there. Sri Ramakrishna says, beholding diversity is born of delusion. Everywhere, the scientific mind wants to separate things into particular categories. But this is a delusion. We have to go to the more general and the more subtle. And so, beholding diversity is born of delusion. Beholding unity is knowledge. The more we see the ocean, the less important every drop becomes. Beholding unity is born of enlightenment. It's a simple statement Sri Ramakrishna makes, but yet so profound. So what is this aspect of delusion, or this aspect of this ashra, or versus the aspect of shura in the enlightened people, the jnani? The difference is the discrimination which says, let me not look at the diversity, let me look at the unity. This is what is called the realization of Vasudeva. But what do they do? What do these entities do who are devoid of devotion and wisdom? Is there any hope for them? So their ways are dilated on in this next stanza. Kamaishtaishtai ritat jnanaha prapadyante yadevataha tam tam niyamam astaya prakritya niyataha swaya. By those whose discrimination has been led astray, that's all of us from time to time, nothing steady. By this or that desire, where do they go to? They go to what is described as the devas, deva. Now what does that mean? Does it mean beings and so on? You can take it in that way. But what it means is the minor fulfiller of desires. Because I have a limited motive, what we call the Lord as nature fulfills all those desires, but then we are devotees of the givers of desires and not the real entity in its own nature. That's the difficulty. So all these devotees, only one has no desire. All the others have desires, whether it's for relief of distress, whether it is for improvement in life or knowledge, whether it is for wealth. All of these three categories, their whole motive is some kind of desire. Give me something. And for those people, they go into the minor aspects with the minor rewards, and following this or that rite, because it's a ritual you can give, constrained by their own nature. See, when it is Vasudeva who has become all this, the question of other gods existing independent of him, this doesn't arise even. But for those entities it arises. And you can take it this way in many different ways actually. Let's take it in a Roman Catholic way. Oh, Saint Anthony, please give me this. See? And hopefully Saint Anthony is listening and he'll give it to you. Light a candle, make a ritual. Oh, Saint somebody, do this. This saint's relic is coming on a tour very nicely. Put it there, thousands of people come on pilgrimage, and they all have requests. And of course you have to be omnipresent and omniscient to understand millions and billions of requests simultaneously. But because there's a cosmic mind, all things are granted. Lord being a wish-fulfilling tree, all these are granted by the power of creative thought. And creative thought mobilizes the tanmatras that we call devas. And these elemental forces condense and bring to us what we want. This is the power of prayer. The creative capacity to mold the nature according to our wishes and desires. With this caveat that a personal cosmic mind, what we call personal God, is wise enough not to grant us things which are bad for us. And so, healing disease, says Sri Ramakrishna, winning litigation, walking on water, trifling psychic powers such as these appeal most to men of base mental make. But the true devotees give no thought to those vulgar things. They are solely intent on gaining the gracious vision of the Lord. This is the goal in the bhakti terms. Healing disease, yeah. Lord, I have arthritis, please take it away. I don't know who the Lord will give it to, but let it not anybody else, but not me. Winning litigation, yeah. Lord, I am in dire straits. People are suing me. What can I do? Or difficult situation like that. Generally, people are working against me. And then we come on to other things. We have heard that many saints have this capacity to walk on water. We heard that Jesus did it. And we think, that's fun. Let me do that also. And of course, you see, this faith question comes up. You see the story. The story is told in many other different parables as well, but in Jesus'
St. Peter is a
St. Peter. Yeah. So walking on the water. See, Ramakrishna's story is there as well about the milkmaid there. Yeah. And her job was to transport milk across the river and other people to the other side. And there was a great pandit there. And one day she was late for some difficulty or other, and he berated her. And he said, but you're a religious person, why didn't you walk across if the boat was delayed? All you have to do is pray to the Lord, repeat the name of Hari. And so the following day she came and he noticed, there's no boat, how did you come? You told me, I just followed your instructions, I repeated constantly the name of God and walked across the water. He didn't believe her. So he said, show me. They went to the water and she said, but you yourself said that it could be done. Watch. And she, Hari, off she went. He said, you come on, you try it. So he had a new dhoti on, is the story. He made it so creative. He lifted his dhoti, his new dhoti. He didn't want to get it wet. And tentatively, Hari, and of course sank. And the tragedy was not the sinking, he got his new dhoti all wet. Right. So, you see, that's the power of faith. But if you don't have that faith, if you don't have that devotion, if you don't have the selflessness that goes with it, it'll be an egocentric thing. Supposing God says, all right, from tomorrow, you have this gift of walking on water, then what will you do? You'll charge enormous fees. Come watch me do this. Walk on the water. So all of these is an illustration of trifling psychic powers. And there are many people who want that in different areas. Whatever it is, whatever desire you have, whether it is of this type or of a material type, the psychic type or a material physical type, it is not love of God. So what does the Lord do with those people of mean mentality, foolish endeavors? And the next thing comes. And a very generous response is there. Now the meter changes a little bit. Yo yo yam yam tanu bhaktaha sadhaya rachitam ichati. Tasya chalam sadham tameva vidadaham ya aham. Who whatever, this is such a beautiful passage, whatever form any devotee with faith wishes to worship, I match it, I make that faith steady. That means all forms of truth. We shouldn't argue against which form of God we should worship. Worship your own dearest one. And if that form happens to be a desire fulfiller, even that, I make your faith in that strong. Even if you desire a relief from difficulties in life, that's your reason why you worship, even that I make your faith strong. Even if you desire wealth, I make your faith strong in that also. Whatever form, I make your faith. So children are very particular to have sweetmeats shaped to their likings. You know, you can shape a sweetmeat as a cow or a horse or a shell or this or that and the other. But you see, it's the same confectionery. The same sugar is required. The same mix of milk and sugar or whatever it's made from. All right, so we'll leave that off and we'll pick that up. We'll just give you the English translation of the next stanza quickly. And so, endowed with that faith, he engages in the worship of that form, and from it, from that faith and from that form, he obtains his desires, which are being actually ordained by that one source, by me. We may think that it is saint this and saint that. No, it's from me. That's the point. And so we are nearly at the end of this chapter. Next week we should, time permitting, we should finish it off completely, and then we go on to the next chapter. It depends how we go. So we leave that off for the time being. And as with everything, we don't just leave it there as instruction or information transfer. The idea of any kind of study of Shastra or Scripture is that we reflect on it and that we meditate on it and that it leads us to the purport of what the Scripture is actually saying. So with that we say peace, peace be unto all. Om Shanti, 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 Shanti.